Welcome to Happy New Zealand Music Month, apparently. That's today's piece of stupefying trivia. But for those of you interested in Uptown, we're reconstituting the band. There you are, there's a thought. However, the meeting is live webcast. We have electronic meeting attendance protocols, and I would ask you to observe them. Please be present in the meeting. Phones off. I'll onto quiet, please. We all check that now. And the best experience, most sure, is joined. Have we got people online?
Yes.
Okay. Attendance by electronic link. Councillor Patterson Hamlin, for reasons that are unknown, and Councillor Williamson because there's a tree fell down outside his house and he can't get out.
Yes. Councillor Patterson Hamlin.
Where?
There, on the screen.
Oh, there she is. Apologies, none received.
Yeah.
And so we don't have to do that. Declarations of interest, there's nobody doing anything with that. Confirmation of minutes from the 31st of March, one which ended up on the 21st of April. Is anyone prepared to move and second those? Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Greg Sayers. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. Item not on the agenda. Public input. Today we have public input. And I would like to welcome the Cornwall Park Trust Board, who are going to give us a chat about the Trust Board's master plan. So, Murray and your team, I think I recognise Alistair, and you can introduce your team, please, and we'll move to receiving and discussing the Cornwall Park. Nice pictures. I enjoyed the maps. It was a bit hard to see which road was outside which one, but that wasn't on it. But
Wharetu nei tēnā koe, te pape takoto nei tēnā koe. E te koramatua, e te rangatira nui, tēnā koe. E ngā rangatira mā, tēnā koutou katoa. E mihi tonu ana kia koutou mō tō koutou awhi, mō tō koutou tautoko kia mātou, ki te tutaki kia koutou, ki te kōrero mō e pāna ki Cornwall Park. So, to you, Mayor, thank you very much for your time this morning, and to councillors for taking the time to welcome us today. So we are Cornwall Park. With me today is Fiona Mao, who's our communications manager, and Rupert George, who's recently joined as an associate trustee, and our chairman, Alistair Carruthers. Now, Alistair you probably know from his many interactions with council, and also has recently taken on the role as chairman of Netball New Zealand. So I'd just like to hand to Alistair for a couple of seconds, perhaps to have a quick discussion, and then we'll get into the our presentation. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Mari, and ngā mihi. It's just such a pleasure to be here again. We're in a different role. I just want to point out to you that we are here today not to moan, not to ask for anything, but to maybe tell a story about why we believe we're one of the city's best friends, and to just give you a sense of our aspirations for the next 100 years, having inherited this extraordinary gift from one of our most conspicuous generous citizen, Sir John Logan Campbell, about 100 years ago. In fact, in 2029, only a few years' time, it will mark the anniversary, 100 years since the park first opened. So we have a number of things to explain, and we will take some questions throughout or at the end, but we're here to make your day. We're not here to take your day.
Kia ora, thank you. So are we okay to crack on? All right. Oh. Turned itself off. So with that, we'll progress through the presentation. So as Alistair said, this is our shared aspirations. While we've got a master plan, I think the key thing for us is to share our aspirations with you, because we think there's a great partnership opportunity to work with council. And on that, I acknowledge the Tupuna Manga Authority, who we who have done quite a bit of work with. So So just a few key facts. Cornwall Park was donated by Sir John in 1901, opened in 1903. He purchased the land probably in the late 1850s from an Irishman who purchased the land in the 1840s. As you well know, there's a significant history with the site. It's formerly an extensive par site. Currently 172 hectares, so we've got around about 9,000 trees. We plant about 15,000 plants annually, so there's a significant amount of biodiversity, biosecurity work we do. And one of the key points of difference for us is we've got probably one of the only working farms in the middle of a city. So about 70 hectares of Cornwall Park is farmland. We have about 60 to 80 Simmental cattle, who I'm sure many of you have seen. They're very docile, very big animals. And we have about 300 Perrendale sheep, which provide a bit of wool and some lawn mowing facilities for us. We have well over 2 million visitors a year. We probably get more than 1 million cars through the park, so simple math says that there's, certainly if you times that by 2 or 3, you're going to get 2 to 3 million people very, very quickly. We think 2 million's light, but we suspect a lot more than that. So it's a very well-used, well-loved place. It has unique geographical, geological and archaeological formations given the nature of the maunga, and we're grateful to Sir John that he put it aside and protected it in perpetuity for the people of Auckland and New Zealand. A key feature of the park is that we are independent of any funding. We are totally self-funded. Sir John gifted endowment land in 1908, about 140 odd acres of land that we've set aside and developed over the years, which fund the park. So we are totally self-funded and independent. But we think moving forward there's a great opportunity to work particularly with council, given what we can offer. So we're an essential part of Auckland being a positive city, which is a message you, sir, have put forward and we very much support. So how we connect. If you have a look at that picture, I think a picture paints 1,000,000 words, or 1,000, depending on how much money you've got. If you see the dotted line smack in the middle, that's us, the City of Auckland and Cornwall Park. And then you can see some other key, I guess, ecological features or landscapes that surround it. And we're in the middle of that. And what we're finding as the city intensifies, we're becoming not only a safe haven for animals, insects, and as such, but also for people. So we connect significantly to the environment around us. And that is something we definitely want to work on, and it's something we're looking forward to working with Auckland City on. So our master plan. These are our key guiding principles, which we think align with what Auckland Council are looking at, so kaitiakitanga. So that's improving the park's ecological stewardship, and that, I think, fits in quite well with if I hope I can say this, with Auckland City. Tikanga, so doing it right and looking after what we've got. And ngā mahi a whenua, so we are committed to agriculture, food production, although we clearly don't produce enough food to support Auckland. There are opportunities from an educational perspective to teach people about that because we have a working farm and part of the plan considers marakai and gardens. Te Aki Onamata, supporting cultural heritage and history, and manaakitanga, so that's being able to provide hospitality to people who visit the park, but also visit Auckland and New Zealand. So some of the key projects that constitute our master plan, and a little bit about the master plan. The first master plan was probably developed in the early 1900s, and then in 2014, Cornwall Park undertook a process of developing the master plan, which you see on the page in front of you. So that was developed in 2014. Across the master plan, there's probably about 40 to 44 key projects for the next 100 years, so it's a bit of a guide. And if we were to try and cost that out today, that's probably about 180 million. So there's quite a bit of, there's quite a bit of work that we're looking to do. And so we think a lot of what we do fits in with Auckland, and we think we can work with Auckland City on how we do that. So looking at Cornwall Park, and I know these things are quite interesting to some people, so it's broken down into key areas, 5 key areas. So we've got a sports precinct, and we know that sports grounds in Auckland are becoming pretty rare, so there's about 9 hectares of sports fields there that potentially could be used, and the plan is to develop a sports hub. We have the core precinct, and that's around activation of the core part of the park. So there's a Grand Avenue, there's a Central Plaza. There's also a number of other features like a Cody Grove, barbecue stands, which are all becoming pretty important. So, you know, we've got 3 Cody stands in Cornwall Park. Probably you won't find those anywhere else other than the Waitakere Ranges or further south. We have an agricultural precinct, which we think is really exciting. So part of this is developing gardens and providing education features for people to learn about gardens, but also about farming. Sir John was very keen on the primary industry and was very keen to ensure that we continued that commitment to New Zealand. So part of that is creating, I guess, a working farm depot, gardens where people can come and visit and see how our primary industry, Hort and Ag, work. And then we have the Onehunga precinct, which is sort of to the south, and that's engaging with our local community. So part of that is creating walkways around the park so people can enjoy what we're doing. And then park-wide projects, one we're looking at the moment and partnering with interested parties, is about creating a walk around the park, but it's more than a walk. One of the things we want to try and do is reintroduce lost species to Cornwall Park, to the centre of the city. And as you all know, once you do that, biosecurity, biodiversity increases significantly. And as you can see from the previous slide, we can become a central connecting point for Auckland and the other areas. So the next 1 to 5 years, in the short term, unifying the park, so that's creating that walk we talked about, improving movement through the park. Like I said before, we have about 1 million cars going through the park. We probably want to reduce that and give more space to people. We have about 6 hectares of tar seal running through the park, so we think walking, pedestrian, cycling could be a better way to do that. Strengthening biodiversity. So as I said, we've got 3 Cody Groves, creating boardwalks through those groves so people can enjoy them. Designing precincts around the park, so linking various aspects of the park. And park is a platform, and this is where we think we can offer a lot of value working with Auckland Council and our local communities as well. We know green spaces are very rare and becoming more rare in Auckland, and we have 172 hectares of green space that we would like to work with Council on about how we could be a better park for Auckland and New Zealand. And park is a classroom, teaching, mātauranga, knowledge about not only New Zealand and Auckland today, but what it was like pre-European and even pre-people. So these are the kinds of things that Cornwall Park offers a window into. So a really great educational opportunity. So we think our master plan aligns very closely with the Auckland Plan 2050, your 6 key outcomes, belonging and participation, so that Aucklanders feel connected. What better way to do that than through a place like Cornwall Park? Māori identity and well-being. So it is a key point of difference for Aotearoa, New Zealand, our Māori heritage, so celebrating that. Homes and places, people like their backyards, and as we intensify, Cornwall Park has the ability to provide the backyard for Auckland. We know that Auckland Centre is the heart of Auckland. We think we're the soul of Auckland, so we can offer that perspective. Transport and access, we do get a lot of transport around Cornwall Park, so being able to fit into the transport plan for Auckland is critical. Environment and cultural heritage. Auckland's natural environment and heritage are really critical, and this clearly is something that we as Cornwall Park would like to work with Auckland Council on. We think we can offer significant value in that regard. And opportunity and prosperity. Auckland is benefiting from a strong, inclusive and sustainable economy. We think there are benefits, and we think there's things that we can do to support that also. So Cornwall Park fitting into the landscape of Auckland City as one of the greatest cities in the world. And so there it is. It's the green space down in front of Acacia Lodge, looking away. Acacia Lodge, of course, is Sir John's house that he built when he came to Auckland back in the 1840s. So we've got it sitting just behind that. And so that's a nice view down onto the front lawn, down towards Green Lane West.
And if I might add, if I can add one fun fact about Acacia Lodge, that beautiful house. If anybody's been to Gilt Restaurant, just not too far behind us, that is exactly where the house was when it was first established, and then it was lifted, I think, in the 1920s and brought to the park and is now, it's listed. It's a very significant historic place, and we keep a very close eye on it when we have wind events because it's not very heavy. Very happy to have questions.
Well, that was very good, thank you very much. I'll move that and the Deputy Mayor will second receiving that, but in the meantime, have anyone got any questions of that delightful presentation?
Thank you very much. It's lovely to positively start the day with such an amazing presentation. You definitely are, in my opinion, one of the jewels in our city's crown. I've got a couple of questions. My first is, do you see Cornwall Park having an opportunity as an event space, an outdoor event space, or is that something that you think isn't within your mandate, you'd rather just leave it for what it is?
Short answer is yes, but done carefully. Sir John's gift describes a whole bunch of things that he thinks the park could be used for, and it does include public entertainment and education and art and enjoyment. So yes, and it already is an event space. I mean, people can hold weddings there. We're increasingly using it as a place where people can shoot digital content because it's just such a beautiful backdrop. We are toying with proposals for concerts and other types of public entertainment, but we are very mindful of our environmental obligations to the park itself, and very intense high traffic events will do damage to not just the parkland, but actually to the ecological environment as well. We have an enormous number of birds and invertebrates. One of the most tricky times is to do something incredibly noisy during their breeding season. It absolutely disrupts them. So we're balancing all of these things because there is a lot of demand for this. But yes, we will cautiously look at these things, and we hope to do some stuff in the near future.
And which leads me very nicely to my second question, which is, you talked about the fact, I think it was 6,000, how many kilometres of asphalt do you have?
We've roughly probably got around 6 hectares
Okay.
of tar seal, roughly.
Right. So if there was to be a reduction, I suppose my question is, what are you doing to lobby Auckland Transport about better public transport options as a destination? Because the main Green Lane Road, I'm not sure how that works for public transport. So what I'm saying is, if people wanted to get there by public transport, how difficult is it vis-a-vis taking a family by car?
It's very easy if you take the train. You can get off, and it's just a 5-minute walk. There are good bus links, but we think they could be improved. In the excuse me, in the medium term, we want to probably decar the park, or at least reduce the amount of traffic that goes through it. And I'm not sure if you saw in that earlier map, but from the park entrance actually begins on Manukau Road with the crescent that we have just recently replanted and restored Sir John's statue. But Puriri Drive, which comes past St Cuthbert's, is actually parkland. It's a private road, and people use it as a through road to cut through the park. So we've already stopped northern traffic coming through the park, but you can go south carefully on one lane. Over time, we're going to look to mitigate that. One of the interesting consequences that we're also managing is that if you stop or reduce car traffic in the park, it then becomes an unbelievably attractive place for cyclists to run pelotons through because it's all tar sealed. So you create one solution to a problem and you open up another thing that we've got to work on. But over time, we would like, in our master plan dream, we would like to have a place where people can park possibly on the other side of Green Lane or maybe near the hospital, and we would use electronic shuttles to take people with disabilities through the park, or golf carts to take people around, but otherwise to increase the sense of pedestrian and gentle human traffic rather than any other form of transportation. And that originally was Sir John's dream. Puriri Drive was a carriageway. People would come through in carriages to come up to ultimately to the tihi. and it's now a bit of a racetrack.
Finally, sorry, I don't want to monopolise. You didn't talk about how you financially, sustainably pay for what is needed. So can you just give a brief outline of how you are funded?
Sure. We fund ourselves through income on the assets that we have on the endowment land that Sir John left for the city. So we have three broad classes. There's residential housing, some of which is on ground lease, and that is a point of pain for some people as we do various reviews only every 21 years against the valuation of the land, which constantly goes up. We own quite a lot of the houses ourselves and run them as a rental portfolio. We also have the showgrounds and the show buildings, and we have leased those, and they're running as a pretty effective commercial concern. And St Cuthbert's is on our land, is on a substantial part of our land, and so they also pay ground rent to us. We get rental from the cafe and the bistro, and we are looking increasingly at the possibility of donor pathways as well. I don't think members of the public realise that it's not only free, but they pay nothing. It all comes from our activities.
That was what I was trying to say. The ratepayers of Auckland actually don't contribute at all.
We don't take any ratepayer money. We're not asking for that. We'd love to be a platform for increased planting of the park. One of our crazy dreams at the moment is to try to imagine the 50 lost species from Tamaki that have retreated or gone and that were endemic before urbanisation. Could we start to bring them back into the park? Could this become a reference and a memory site for what was, as well as what it could be? So these are things we're working on.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you for what you do for our city. Most grateful.
Thank you. Councillor Philippine, please.
Atamare he mana, good morning, Chair. Atamare ngā kai kaunihira me ngā kaimahi o te kaunihira to the councillors. I acknowledge you as well as the workers here. A tēnā koutou katoa to Cornwall Park Trust. I've only got, firstly, Alistair, congratulations on both the roles, including netball. I look forward to working with you, as we did when you were the chair of Creative New Zealand. So just mihi to you. To you, Nirupa, good to see you. Congratulations to you and your husband on your daughter. So ngā mihi ki a koe. Murray, ngā mihi ki a koe moto mahi to you. And it's good to see you. My question is, currently, how many fields do you have that is set aside for rugby league, and obviously you've got a platform for cricket as well? So now, how many do you have?
So, thank you, Matua, for that question. So we, as my chair Alistair mentioned before, along Puriri Drive, we've got about 8 to 9, and I can get the exact figures to you, but there's about 8 or 9 hectares of land there that's set aside for rugby and rugby league. That's the oval one. And then there's a bunch of land on Cornwall Park itself that we have for the Cornwall Park Cricket Club. So that's on the other side of Green Lane West, just adjacent to the hospital. So we've got those fields, and in addition to that, there's the Auckland Bowling Club, which is just up towards the Market Road end of Puriri. We also have the tennis club, which is next to the primary school. So to answer your question, there's quite a significant amount of sports fields available for use across a broad range of sporting codes.
Kia ora, just one more pātai he mana, and that is your 100-year master plan. You've got how many moving forward would you end up having? You've got all the ones you've just told us moving forward, and I look forward to the conversation that some of the councillors here have already had with you, Murray, and look forward to having that meeting with you as well, Alistair, and who you wish to have moving forward. How many fields and with the sports you've just identified will still be there leading into your 100-year plan? Kia ora.
Yeah, ngā mihi kia koe, te matu motu patoi kia. So that's a very good question. So the 100-year master plan envisages, as you can see at the top of that, a sports-type precinct. So, it'd be difficult for me to say, or us to say in 50 years' time, what's going to be the predominant sport for New Zealand. So the key thing is there's a concept to have sporting facility, recreational facilities. I think the main thing for us is, if I can say this, is actually working with yourselves, Matu, around, well, what does that look like? We've got green space. What's the best way to use it moving forward? Because this is a 50 to 100-year master plan. So at the moment, we've sort of nominally said, you can see there's 3 fields for the oval ball, there's a cricket oval, and there's a couple of other playing fields, but that's just a concept only. And so I'd like to think that we can work with council and interested stakeholders to see what they could look like for the future.
And just adding to that, Councillor, the reason we don't have a precise number is because we've currently got a patchwork of things all over the park. And what we're trying to do with this master plan is create zones where we would say around Puriru Drive, that's where sport's going to be concentrated. We could potentially free up some land for parking just off Green Lane so that we can answer Councillor Simpson's questions about where people can park and have a different entry into the park. The master plan is about alignment. It's about not doing regrettable things that get in front of what you might concentrate over time. I just want to also acknowledge Nirupa here, who is known to many of you. She's just joined us as an associate trustee. So under the terms of the trust, under Sir John Logan Campbell's actual deed, there can only be 4 trustees at any one time. It's a self-perpetuating trust. I'm only number 27 in the entire 100 years of this gift. And Adrian Young-Cooper, whom you know has stepped out of being the chair, she's still on the trust. We still have Keith Smith, we've got Aaron Snodgrass, but we've created 3 associate roles so that we can bring more diversity and more strategic thinking into the board, and Nirupa is a key part of that. We have John Coop, whom some of you will know, Managing Director of Warren and Marnie, and we also have James Fletcher, who again some of you will know. So we're at a stage of renewal and rethinking a lot of these things, and I just wanted to recognise you, Nirupa.
Tēnā koutou. Look forward, Murray, to that meeting with you, Alistair, and whoever, with other councillors. Kia ora. Tēnā koe he
Thank
mana.
you for that. Councillor Ferry, please.
Well, kia ora, thanks very much. I go to Cornwall Park usually a few times a month, even though it's a little bit away from home, particularly the grotto or secret garden for rock hiding and hunting with one of my kids. I had a couple of questions. One was just around the possibility to work with us around some stormwater management stuff, particularly on the eastern side of the park, because there are some issues for properties downstream from you, off endowment land, and that could be an opportunity there, particularly around some of the ecological stuff around wetlands and things. So is that something that you've been thinking about at all?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. Yes, it absolutely is something we've been thinking about also recently since 2022 and
Yeah.
so yeah, it is something that's top of mind for us. We're conscious of that. So I think in the context of the discussion we just previously had, and part of the reason for being here today is to work more closely with Te Kaunihira.
Great. I'd be keen to follow that up.
Kia ora.
And the other thing is the mention the Deputy Mayor brought up of transport links. So there was recently a consulted on proposal from Auckland Transport around Green Lane West. And so have you had any interaction with that yet? Because that would potentially help a lot with the bus routes in particular, and also some of the cycling and pedestrian infrastructure. But I know that they've sort of gone, oh, we haven't quite got the proposal right yet, so they're sort of having another look at it. Have they talked to you directly about it at all?
Yes. We've actually taken quite a bit of advice on it from our planners, Buffer School, looked at it as part of our own, what we call the MOVE project, which is about our own traffic management, and we have made a submission, I think, the last week. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah.
And just on water, sorry, Councillor, I just wanted to say also that probably it's not well known that we also house an enormous reservoir. And just near the archery club, underground is, I think, the largest water care city reservoir, and of course that creates a great height for water to travel through. So we have a really good relationship with water care as well over all of that.
Great. Yes, no, and I was aware of the reservoir because it showed up on the stuff you sent ahead, but I hadn't known about it before that. So well done. And that's good to hear that you have a relationship with Waterkey for it, and good to hear that you're working with Auckland Transport on that proposal. I think it will be really key to get more people there by non-car means, because I think the parking is always at capacity. And really the solution to that is not more parking, it's other modes. So yeah, good to hear working on that. Thank you.
So just on that, I just want to acknowledge the team at Auckland Transport. They've been fantastic. Kia ora.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Fletcher, please.
Oh, thank you. In a way, the challenges that you face are almost like running a little mini city within a city, and yet there's no cost to the ratepayers. And I always think that that is just such a marvellous act of philanthropy, one, you know, on an international scale that we all get to appreciate, but probably take for granted from time to time. I'm reassured because I'm worried about the disability community. So your observations that you will make provision for that is something that's really important to me. That while you're wanting to decrease the tahsil in the place, you are going to make provision for those, so everybody, in an inclusive way can enjoy it. My question in part has been asked by the Deputy Mayor, but it is, ongoing sustainable funding must be a huge challenge for you. And I know at times it's become controversial when you have sought with the leases and so forth. Do you want to comment on that and how you go about interacting with the wider public to create that awareness and understanding?
I suspect the wider public doesn't actually, in terms of our main visitors, realise just what our commercial model is. We do have, as I said, a very diverse range of assets that we derive income from. We run on the smell of an oily rag, actually, and every time we approach a commercial question, we have one objective in mind, and that is the park. Everything we do is for the park. And Sir John's gift of endowment land was very, very clear. It needed to create enough commercial return that the park could be run for free for all New Zealanders and all other visitors. There will be points of inflection around this. We, on a basic return on actual value, we actually we make very little. But we have to make money in order to run the park, which has increasing costs and issues associated with it. It's really interesting. We got canned in the media a few months ago for closing the park because of an orange wind warning, and some commentators said we're just doing a nanny thing and people should be able to walk in the park and so on. An enormous makarapa fell and wiped out the archery club rooms. People would have died if we had not done that. And we now are facing even costs around our tree management, because trees have a natural life. Some of them are over 100 years old, some of them have to go. And so there are constantly increasing costs, but I can assure you that every time we do something in our commercial estate with leaseholders, with our rental properties, it is with one objective, it's to run the park.
And my second question is to Murray, who is one of the great treasures you have. To what degree have you've mentioned it in your presentation to us this morning, but within the master plan, the weighting that you have put on the working farm and how not just Aucklanders but New Zealanders can better understand the farming history of this country. Can you give me a little better understanding? You're moving towards having different areas, for different purposes, but how does the farm then integrate with it all? And how, Murray, is that just such a fundamental part of the operations of the park?
Well, ka mihi nui kia koe e whae moto calling me a treasure. That's very kind of you. So, but it's a very good question. And so right from a bit of history, right from the get-go, Sir John recognised, and he's quite a far-sightful gentleman, that the primary industry was critical to New Zealand. So that is embedded in what we do. And and latterly, as we've researched other great parks around the world, we've come to realise we are the only park, we think, in the environment we're in, that has a working farm. So with those two things in mind, to your point, ma'am, it is absolutely critical for us to keep it. And then if you consider that a big chunk of our national GDP is derived from our primary industry, we think we've got a part to play in terms of educating New Zealanders around the primary industry. And subjectively, as you well know, we're finding that more and more people, when we were growing up as kids, we'd go and play on the farm, go and play in the bush. It doesn't happen these days. And so it's really heartwarming to see families come and being able to engage with a working farm in the middle of a city. So across those 3 or 4 things, ma'am, if I hope I'm giving you some comfort here, we believe it's absolutely critical to Cornwall Park, not only to honour Sir John's commitment to New Zealand, but equally the future of New Zealand. So, I mean, we don't see it. It's featured into our 100-year master plan. We don't see it going anywhere in the next 100 years, and in fact, we will look to reinforce its position within Cornwall Park.
I'm greatly assured by that, thank you.
Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Foley, please.
Kia ora, thanks, Chair, and I just want to start by adding my voice in tautoko what others have said, and thank you so much for the work that you do and continue to do in providing a beautiful sanctuary, the lungs of Auckland, as you put it in your report, that we can all enjoy for free. And I don't know if many people, as you say, do understand that it is fully funded and not funded by ratepayers. So kia ora for that, and thank you so much. Some of my question has already been asked and answered by others, but what I was keen to hear from you is what can we do as council to help you in your work going forward? What are some of the top sort of asks that you have? And I appreciate that you're not asking us for funding, but what are the things that we can do as council to support you? Kia ora.
I can honestly say that at the moment, nothing. But I think we should start working together where our interests overlap. That is why we're here today. As we start to, we really respect and obviously will be subject to the AUP. And however Plan Change 120 lands, that will affect the estate around the park that has our housing on it. So we do have an interest in that. We want to understand about the intensification of Green Lane and those areas. And we, even within this master plan, we have things like view shafts that are built in so that you can be on the maunga and see as many other maunga as you can. So we do look to those sorts of things, but we will just be a conscientious citizen and contribute in the normal way. I do think, and I just want to pick up your point, Councillor Fletcher, about disabilities, I do think it's really important to know that when we do things like, as Murray was pointing out, design a new boundary walk, it's because we want to see the park as very porous. Entries and exits should be everywhere for everybody. We'll be designing pathways that are absolutely graded for people with disabilities. We'll be extending the ngahere, the forest, all the way to the edge, if we can, and starting to green up the border. So these are things that I think we can work on together. We absolutely want to have a great relationship with your parks team as well, because we don't want to live in isolation. I know that there are incredible opportunities around various parks, including Western Springs and Cornwall Park, to make it really intensely nature positive. And we just see ourselves as a big part of your wider responsibilities too.
Kia ora, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Hills, please.
Kia ora koutou katoa. Thank you for the work. I have just a few comments. A question, sorry. The first one, I see you're trying to bring back the understory and more biodiversity to the park. Do the residents on the outside, whether they're part of the park or not, are they into being a buffer or helping with the pest control, or do you have any kind of relationship with them on that sort of level?
Tēnā koe, ka mihi nui kia koe. So we do have very limited interaction. You're talking about biosecurity, biodiversity. There are interested groups around, for example, that are engaged in looking after the bird life and things like that. So, but it's certainly an area that we think we could we'd like to look into a bit better. Yeah.
Awesome. We've got some good examples on the shore with Takarunga and
Yeah,
Mangaika.
yeah.
The communities around there are creating some pretty amazing volunteer work.
Yeah.
Question on the buses. So the 65 from Point Chev to GI, and I think the 321 from the city to Otahuhu go right past, but they stop at the hospital,
Yeah.
but there's no footpath to get to the walkway. Could we be, we're about to have Auckland Transport come into council, or it's already happened, kind of. Would it be good to work with you on either getting another stop before Puhutakawa Road, or trying to get the footpath in? I know there's a good plan for the cycleways and stuff out at the moment, but it still didn't include a footpath on that side, which is because that would seem to create a bigger possibility.
Yeah, so that's a great question. As our chair said, we've worked with BOFA to come up with an alternative plan to one that's been put up by Auckland Transport. So we'd like to, and we haven't yet had a follow-up discussion with them, but we certainly want to work with your team on how we can look at pedestrian movement, cycle movement. So we think there's some opportunities to work there on that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think the median, in my opinion, seems like a bit of a waste if you can add footpath on the other side.
Absolutely,
But the other question was, I used to work at Green Lane Hospital a long time ago, and so I knew how to get to the park. But it's back then, and it might have changed. It never seemed that legible or easy if you're, waiting for family at a clinic, or you're visiting, how you would get into the park. Have you got a good relationship with the DHB and the clinical centre to actually connect better to the park? Because it doesn't look like it's that easy on Google Maps still.
Yeah, no. So that's another very good question. So it's all part of working on the transport plan, is to engage with the bodies around the park to see what we can do better. Absolutely.
And I think just to that point, Councillor, if you just look at how rapidly Auckland has urbanised around the park since it was designed, things that we confront now, like those incredibly beautiful historic stone gates, those pillars, they're very narrow to drive through. They're very hard to see pedestrians on either side. We're actually trying to work out how to mitigate those at the moment, because the world has changed. And when they were set up, they weren't contemplating 2.2 million visitors a year. By the way, 47% of our visitors, like you, Councillor Ferry, come at least once a week. It is that sticky.
Okay, Councillor Bartley.
Thank you very much for what you do. I think the beauty of Cornwall Park is the tranquility. And so I wouldn't be wanting to see major events there. That's the whole reason why I come there, is for peace. And I also think Cornwall Park has a lot of emotional connection for a lot of people. When my auntie got diagnosed with cancer, we went to Cornwall Park. The last family photo my family took before my mum died, Cornwall Park. Had my dog's 13th birthday, Cornwall Park. So I love Cornwall Park, and I don't want to see it change. So my question is, I suppose, is there any talk of changing from what you are? Because if I take a note out of Bridget Jones' diary, I like you just as you are. I don't want to see any change. So what are you looking to change?
We want to become more parky. We want more trees, more people, more biodiversity. We want people to come and use it as they do for all of their social reasons. And it is extraordinary. You talk about Green Lane Hospital. We know that there is an area in the Olive Grove where people have come to grieve, have come to terms with the diagnosis, have come to just take a beat while they go and visit somebody who's unwell. And there are zones in the park that have particular emotional memory for all sorts of reasons that we can't see, but our visitors do. So that sacred nature of the park, as Murray started to use this phrase, and we as a trust love it, about it being the soul of Auckland, we think is really resonant. And I assure you that any activities that we do there will never compromise that tranquility or the true sense of what people love about the park.
Okay, we've got the end of that, but it is an important place. Every Tuesday for all those years I played for Te Papa, we had to run up to the top of the blooming mountain. If you do that every Tuesday, you should get fed up with it after a while. I've got a question though, because the Auckland Showgrounds is part of what you own, and it's sort of not shown in those nice pictures. And the ring inside Campbell Crescent is shown in those, and I don't think you own that, and maybe I've got that wrong.
We do have the Auckland Showgrounds. I'm not sure, Mary, on that map. So when the shows boards went into liquidation about 5 years ago, they disclaimed the lease. It came back to us. So we have put actually some former shows board employees in there to run them, and we have a rent arrangement with them. We have a turnover rent arrangement, and if they are very successful, and we don't see any immediate change to that activity.
Well, they are helping to fund you, so it's just a commercial landlord arrangement.
That's correct.
And what about the bit inside Campbell Crescent? Is that yours or ours?
Which bit is that? Sorry.
Campbell, you're talking about,
There's a half, there's a semicircle.
it's ours.
That's ours.
Yeah.
That actual Crescent Park is ours.
Okay, because I'm just looking at the bit that's got green and yellow and it doesn't show there, so perhaps
Right. You might have a slightly different map to what we're looking at. Yeah, no, that belongs to the park. That's parkland.
okay. Because on that map there, I read maps that annoys everybody, and then you've got the bit with the mountain on top of it, and the summit is in white, as if that's different from the green bit. What is that?
So the actual maunga is it's under the management of the Tupuna Maunga Authority,
Okay.
and we have a very close relationship with them. The only one bit of the maunga that we control is the actual obelisk and Sir John's grave. So right
Oh,
on
I
the
see a
tipi
little
where
green bit in the
he
middle
rests.
there.
Yeah, that
that's-
tiny bit is where he's resting.
Suitably complicated, yes. Well done.
Yeah.
Okay.
We got on very well with the TMA and with Murray in the seat. I think our relationships with the TMA and Ngāti Whātua
I'm sure you
and other
do.
interested parties are better than ever.
Councillor Lee has ended with a late question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have a question as such to follow up from the excellent questions from colleagues and yourself. I just want to endorse the comments of the Deputy Mayor when she referred to Cornwall Park as a jewel in the crown. And that's not only the land as the physical embodiment of Sir John's vision and legacy, but yourselves, the people who are carrying on his mission. You're all part of that jewel in the crown, so thank you. And one of I think we should always remember that there was a certain amount of sacrifice for Sir John to make over such a large area of land that he owned into common ownership as such. There were sacrifices with his family and everything else, but he had a vision and the absolute value of open space, and he also had a belief, a passionate belief in the city of Auckland and its people and for future Aucklanders. And one of the members here asked a very thoughtful question: how can we help the work of the Trust and its vision? And I would take the liberty of responding to it myself by saying, carrying on our own mission, following the inspiration of Sir John, and making available open space and parkland for future generations of Aucklanders, just as we have been the fortunate recipient of the generosity and vision of previous generations, people like Sir John Logan Campbell, and, if you will, the founders of our regional parks network, which you had up on the map. That's how I think we can help you and work closely with you. So thank you very much for what you've done and are doing for Auckland.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. If I make one minor comment, at various times the Trust has included councillors and even a mayor of Auckland. In the 1930s, one of the mayors, and I forget his name, I do apologise, was on the Trust and personally planted most of the Purakawa and several of the oaks in Twin Oak Drive. So I'm not inviting you to do that, Mayor Brown, but there have been times where the connection has actually been even very close and active, and I just hope this relationship can grow.
Okay, it's been moved, and thank you very much for having a good discussion and a pleasant start to the day. And it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour of receiving that excellent 100-year plan, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, and carried. Thank you very much, including Sarah said that and put a big thumb up. Okay, we are moving on. Under the local body input, the Rodney Local Board would like to have a say when we get to the Woodhill Sands update during the confidential project part of the day. So now I'm going to move to item 7.1, which is the Hukura Independent Maori Statutory Board Funding Agreement. I don't know who's addressing us on that. Nick Tura. Where's David Taipari? Or members. Anyhow, Nick, this is pretty good. They've got in a good space here, so will you run us through what we've read, but it looks pretty good. And they have had, I notice, some changes in terms of their rent agreements, which have reduced their actual running costs and shifted them in with Ngāti Whātua, which has probably improved events as well anyhow. So it's up to you. Thank you, Nick.
Tēnā tātou kia koutou mā aku rangatira, mihi kawana I rungi o koutou, tuatai kia koe te koromatua, tainoa ki tō mātou kahi katoa rua me ki ko Desley, tainoa atu kia koutou mā o te kaunihira mihi atu. It's a real pleasure to be here today to present this paper to you. As the Mayor indicated, this is a positive report. And I just want to firstly start off by acknowledging the really constructive working relationship we have with Haukura, the Independent Māori Statutory Board. We've worked really closely with the Secretariat on this funding agreement, including sorting out some particular pain points of previous years inside this. By way of background, the funding agreement is an annual statutory requirement of the Local Government Auckland Council Act, and it enables Haukura to carry out its independent role under the Local Government Act. The recommendation is to approve the funding agreement for the 2026-27 financial year. The proposed direct operational funding is $3.134 million. That represents a modest increase of 2.7% or $82,599. This increase is really driven by inflationary adjustments for staff and board remuneration, along with the 0.5% increase in employee KiwiSaver contributions. The increase has been reviewed by Council Finance staff and is in line with the Council assumptions, as well as reviewed by the Council's legal team. Haukura has maintained a largely consistent budget over recent years, with increases limited to remuneration inflationary adjustments. It's also really pleasing to report there has been a bit of a shift in the accommodation situation, which I understand was a point of conversation for a number of the previous years. So there has been an agreement reached, and Haukura will be moving down to the Ngāti Whātua area in Te Toangaroa, and there's an approximate savings of $750,000 over 6 years compared with the current accommodation. Just finally, approving the agreement provides continuity, meeting council's statutory obligation, and supports the ongoing positive and constructive relationship between us. For those reasons, staff are recommending that the governing body approve this funding agreement, and I'm happy to take questions. Koromatua.
Very well done. Thank you for that presentation. Councillor Turner has a question.
Thank you. Just a question. So there's been a $700,000 savings made by going to different premises, but there's still an $82,000 increase. So where have we lost that savings?
So that is a direct contribution towards inflationary pressures, as well as through the remuneration. So on a biannual basis, there is an obligation for us to renew the salaries of board members that sit on that board. That's a legislative requirement, and that is done by an independent. So there's been an increase in those salaries, and that, alongside the inflationary pressures, as well as the increases in the excuse me, in the KiwiSaver contributions, that combined thing has meant that modest increase.
So it's a different system that sets those salaries, those representative salaries, compared to the system that sets our representative salaries. Is that correct?
Not quite. So basically, the salaries are set as a proportion of the salaries of council members. I understand that to be about 80% of that salary members. It's reviewed by an independent, and that's and then that there is presented back. So that's how that works.
And is that salary band constructed like it is here, where depending on the jobs you're given makes a different level of salary?
Yes, that is. I understand that to be the case. So if the chair, for example, would have a particular pay bracket, as well as if you are on if you're on committees, etc., etc.
I'd also ask, but you probably can't answer, what that figure up there is in a percentage relation to the figure that it takes to run this table here.
I can't answer that, but if you would like,
I would be interested to know.
I can ask finance to provide that for us.
Thank you.
Okay. I have no further questions. In the absence of, would you like to move this, Alf? And seconded by Councillor Ferry. Okay, thank you very much. You can retire. Is anyone debate about this, or seems not unusual? All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, carried. Large thumb from Sarah Patterson-Hamlin. Okay, that's very good indeed. We're now leading to the feast of the day, the report from the Chief Executive and the Chief Group Financial Officer, who is where?
We'll just follow up with the CFO. Ross is unwell and dialing in, so you probably expect he'll appear very shortly. Failing that, I'm going to throw Michael Burns in the hot seat. I'll start though, if that's right, Your Worship.
Please do.
So if, I'm going to be quicker than normal today. And part of the reason for that is that the figures around for the quarter ending the end of March are not available to us in this time frame. They'll be coming through shortly. I'll come down to what forecasts are looking like for the end of year result though for you in a moment. Quite a few things to record with you, most of which you're aware, but for the record, the Auckland deal signed, and now we're in a process of planning the implementation of a range of things that are in there. What was that?
Process of reminding them that we've signed it.
Indeed. So, you know, it's good to be at that point where we've got an arrangement signed off. It requires us to have some governance and some program management apparatus around this and bring a discipline to implementation of the commitments in there. So that's the place we're at the moment. The big and most time-consuming thing at the moment, however, is the transport reform. Obviously, the third reading passing of the legislation last week is a critical moment in this whole process, just waiting for the royal assent. I think we're still waiting for the royal assent. But we haven't paused a range of implementation activities around this. So on Thursday, and as I briefed you a week or so ago, would happen on Thursday, we released the change proposal that outlines how we set up the public transport CCO, the structure, the roles, and so forth, and how we set up arrangements within the council organisation for the balance. So we're on track for that, but it has been and will continue to be a monumental piece of work with a lot of people involved, and I just pause to acknowledge the effort that's gone on both within AT and within the change team that's been working on this. You have also adopted the transport policy, and obviously that starts to drive decision making at a strategic level in terms of the end. And we've got to set the Regional Transport Committee up and begin work on the Regional Transport Plan and so on. So we've got that aspect of the apparatus being worked on as well. Probably the other thing I would mention in terms of an immediate focus is around the roading classification framework leading into the allocation of decision making for local boards and governing body, and getting that machinery set up, and just acknowledgement to councillors Baker and Henderson for getting out around the local boards and having those conversations, and your input back into the process is much appreciated. I won't go through in a public environment any more detail around the specific changes. Best left till after Thursday when they're broached with staff. Suffice to say that we're getting everyone ready for that now. I've met this morning with the senior leadership ranks at Auckland Transport to go through it. And that's about getting people in a leadership role prepared for the implementation of that, or the socialising that change for consultation purposes later in the week. Operationally, things are pretty much on course in terms of performance metrics and what have you. Later this month, I have a formal quarterly scorecard report to the Appointments and Performance Committee. If you're in the really sad position of not having enough to do that day and you're not on that committee, I commend that to you if you want to get a fairly fulsome performance report on how things are going in your relationship with me as Chief Exec. However, just to manage understanding of where we're at in the financial year, we continue to forecast a favourable end-of-year position in terms of operating expenditure, in terms of revenue, in terms of the savings targets being met, and from a council point of view in terms of the capital program, where I think the forecast completion against budget's about 93%. There is some forecasts to talk about when we get to the budget committee in the water care and transport space. Water care probably sitting at about 90% and transport about 80% completion against their capital program for the year to 30 June. So I'll save that discussion for when we have the fulsome numbers in front of you after the third quarter numbers are ready. Look, the final thing I just wanted to mention, and I will invite Parul up if you don't mind, Parul, and others who are here for the fuel supply discussion. We took the decision to incorporate an update on fuel supply matters into this CE report. It's covered off in a memo that you've received, but I'll just welcome Parul to speak to this. I just wanted to note that we've quite deliberately focused on the impacts operationally in the organisation and what we can do in the immediate future. There is, of course, broader aspects to this in terms of resilience around energy, both at a community level and for the organisation, climate change drivers and such like. So we could make this discussion as big as folk want, but we've deliberately focused it on the organisation impacts in the here and now. So Parul, and then after Parul, we'll, and I see Ross has appeared, so we'll do the financial report after that.
Kia ora koutou. So I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the team and the group that has come together to work on this. So we established a working group to come together, which is not just council, but the group, to make sure that we were across what was happening in the fuel scenario, and also making sure that we were feeding back to government in terms of what information they require to make their decisions. We are still in a phase of the fact that government direction is still coming. They are also developing it as things change, and we are wanting to keep on top of it. The group has come up with a draft plan that we shared on Friday. It is a business continuity plan, as Phil said. It is to make sure that we as a group are able to respond to the different phases that the government has put forward in front of us. Currently, while we are in phase 1, we are ensuring that we can take any action that is required to make sure people are aware, are taking the right steps to get their fuel consumption down, and also manage the cost impacts that are actually facing our communities. As the phases go up, and it's a question of when, and we do not know when that might happen, we want to ensure if fuel supply gets to that stage where it's rationed to us, we have got the right things in place to be able to do that. So as council and group, we will require to look at our own activities and how do we manage that. But we also have Auckland Emergency Management that will play in with NEMA to make sure they are playing their part as part of central government to help with the rationing part as well. I do have Richard here and Sarah here for any detailed questions on the plan. There is quite a bit of detail that sits behind it, as you can imagine, when we're trying to look at our own activities and going, should we keep this and should we stop this? There's a lot that needs to be thought through. The intention is for us to continue with services as much as possible so that the community is not impacted by what might be coming. So as far as we can, we will ensure that we can do it. But if it is mandated through government that we can't, then it's a different matter. And if we are to ration, we then have to think about what do we continue doing and what do we don't do. So just a bit of a brief there in terms of how we've come up with the plan, but happy to take any questions.
Yeah, so any questions on any of that, very welcome, including the fuel aspect. Just one final note. Obviously, there is, as we've covered earlier, there is a financial impact to be discussed in relation to the annual plan flowing into next year. So that discussion is probably best left for that forum shortly. Councillor Turner.
Thank you. Would you not agree that there is a complex tension behind full facilities contracts which are built on scale, and that usually those scale advantages are because they mobilise plant and staff across the larger area, compared to if we had local contractors, more locally based, with less of those fuel-related pressures?
I can try and address that question through the chair. I think what we have seen in other parts of the business, we do have large contracts. I would want to talk about the waste space. You can look at ways of managing the fuel consumption for the way you do the activities. And I know the current model that parks and communities have, facilities have, also work really closely with their suppliers to look at what aspects of their activities they can actually pause to impact that. So it can be done with a larger scale contractor as well.
With a second level of management, so I'll leave it at that for now, thank you.
If you don't actually top them up because of the diesel thing, they will be incentivised to drive left and be more smooth. If you top them up, they'll carry on roaring around. So don't top them up, please. Councillor Fuller. I've got you down here as an amazing computerised system here. That,
Not for fuel.
not for fuel, righto. Oh no, I am the reader of the buttons.
Sorry, that's not for the fuel though, that's...
We can take any other questions,
Kia ora.
Councillor.
Okay.
Yeah, you can add fuel to the fire by just asking a general question.
All right, thank you. Sorry, ladies, I did put my hand up, but I was just going to ask about the Auckland deal. You know, we were told, or we understand that the fundamental part, well, one of the fundamentals of it is that we have a better, more open relationship with central government and open communication. But I just wanted to understand a little bit more about what happened with SailGP. Were we given a heads up at all? Because I share the frustration that the mayor had when that all unfolded. Kia ora.
I don't know, the mayor may wish to comment, but it's fair to say that we were not given a heads up and an opportunity to deal with that situation that came unstuck because of the government input. The mayor's across this and has communicated to the government more than once on this.
Yes, I think we're going to have to constantly remind them that they've signed this, particularly over the next few months. They easily forget it, or conveniently forget it. The SailGP was a disgraceful result, really, and it's possible that the Minister of Tourism was thinking along the lines of her Minister of Social Welfare roles, which didn't fit that well with tourism. Very disappointing, really, and so we did give them an uppercut on that, and hopefully we'll keep reminding. The whole point is that they have to tell us about stuff. There is another couple of things in there as well in terms of economic development and trips overseas and whether or not they should tell us before they're going and these things, and that hasn't worked particularly well either yet. But we will remind them, and I'm glad that you raised that question because it has been, and it was a bit underwhelming anyhow. And so we need them to at least hold to what we got. So thank you for that.
Your Worship, I'm not doing a very good job here. I wonder if we might hear from Ross and then complete the questions just for
Ross
completeness.
there? Ah, there he is. Handsome fellow. Come on.
Yeah, apologies, I can't be there in person. Just got a cold and flu. Don't want to spread the germs around. Just on the financials, I'll be brief. I think Phil's talked about most of it. Current year is looking good, as Phil said. We're expecting to be cost and revenue both favourable. CapEx will be under budget. Next year is looking tight. As Phil said, that will be discussed through the budget committee. Things were looking good in terms of the annual budget, $50 million gap in the local board funding gaps. That is largely solved, but we now have these fuel costs are likely to hit to some extent for next year, but the extent of that is still highly uncertain. Some decisions will have to be made through the budget committee on that, because the CapEx budget, even at 80 to 90% delivery, the cumulative impact of just a little bit under delivered against LTP kind of does add up to a bit of, a bit less spend, a bit less debt and therefore that should help with interest costs. So a little bit of higher fuel costs, a little bit of lower interest. We think we can make things with a few other adjustments. We can work through some of those fuel impacts. I think the key thing for next year is, because it is uncertain, we're going to have to keep a close eye on things. And I think these kind of monthly updates and the monthly reporting will become quite key. And it may be that if things are higher for longer, we need to come back to you over the course of next year, and we may need to make some other changes as things play out, depending on what happens. Looking further ahead for the long-term plan, this is where the economic situation, what geopolitical events mean for inflation, global interest rates, all those things becomes a bit more uncertain, and that could become a much more sort of challenging operating environment and create budget challenges for us. That's something we have to keep an eye on through the LTP process. One thing that makes it a little bit harder is impacts on credit rating. So just touch on that briefly. So as we've advised councillors previously and the market via the NZX, as a consequence of Moody's downgrading the sovereign rating, not downgrading, sorry, putting the sovereign rating onto negative outlook, I should say, Moody's have also decided to put Auckland Council's very strong AA2 rating on negative outlook. So that is a direct consequence of the council's link to central government. There's a lot of revenue that comes from central government. There's a lot of close collaboration on infrastructure programs, water reform, etc. And the government sort of sits there as a key backstop. Rates capping also means that our finances will be more closely linked to central government going forward. So it's important to note that that negative outlook is not a reflection of the council's financial management. It is all about the impact of the Crown's finances flowing through to council. We don't see any immediate impact on that. We've just done a large debt raise just immediately before the Iran conflict. We completed our largest debt raise of the year. So we're not going to the market in any sort of volume or size anytime soon, which is a good place to be. But over time, it may well add costs. And if over the next sort of year to 18 months, Moody's will think about, well, do they reaffirm the rating? Do they move to a downgrade? So that will depend on what they think of the central government's books. If there is a downgrade, that will start to add to interest costs, particularly in the long-term plan period. So something we're keeping an eye on carefully at the moment. Happy to take any questions on the financial elements.
I got one. Moody's specifically mentioned the rates cap. Do you think I should write to the government and point out that they're dragging us down because of the rates cap, which is just sort of an electioneering slogan anyhow, but it actually has a negative impact on our possible operating costs that they hadn't thought through. They'd thought that through as little as what President Trump thought about the consequences of invading Iran.
I mean, that's up to you how you want to engage politically with central government. I know that the government officials did talk to Standard & Poor's. I'm not sure if they spoke to Moody's, but it is very clear that things that are happening in the government space are having a negative impact on us and our outlook and our cost of debt. So it is a potential unintended consequence of policies such as rates capping and other government policies.
Teleferi has a question.
Kia ora, thank you. I have a couple of questions on the fuel issue and the city deal as well. I'll just do the city deal ones first, if that's okay, because they're probably a bit easier. One of the issues that's been raised with me is the mention in the deal wording of the Central Library potentially being used as a location for a future primary school, and that came as a surprise to the Waitemata Local Board, who have responsibility for the library. Obviously, that potentially calls out other community facilities that might get pulled into the mix of these kinds of conversations. So it'd be helpful to understand how that might happen with our community assets in the future, with some visibility on how that happened this time around, because that was a surprise.
Next to answer that, because he was deviling in the detail.
And there he is.
Thank you, Mayor. I think the first point to acknowledge is just to be clear about what the schedule actually says, which it uses the Central Library as an example of property, building as an example of property the council owns in the city centre, and responds to a request from the Crown that if our request was, can you please look at putting a school in the centre city? That's been a long-standing aspiration of the council in terms of enabling greater residential intensification in the city centre. And the Crown's response was, yes, could you look at whether a council has land which might be appropriate for a city centre school. And so the Central Library was used, building which has been discussed as the various options for that building have been discussed previously as an example of land that the council owns, rather than the deal saying that there's an active consideration of that building becoming a school. So the first thing is just to sort of temper down suggestions that we have agreed through the deal that we would turn the Central City Library into a school. I think the other important point to make is that I suppose this is obvious, but the regional deal does in no way interferes with the normal decision-making processes of the council, and so any decision to do anything of that nature would need to go through the normal processes, which would certainly involve local board decisions in that particular case. So I think it was reflected in there. We repeated a number of times that we would have. We were somewhat constrained in the deal conversation by non-disclosure agreements and by timeframes, and so we were only able to bring information to the governing body and not to local boards. And a different process could have been used, but that was the process we were in. So I think it was used as an example. Any future decisions would any decision to progress that particular item would require fulsome engagement with the local board, as you would expect.
And that assurance has been given to the local board chair, correct, Max?
Yes.
Yep.
Great, good, thank you. And then I guess my other question was, and this doesn't have a quick answer now, but signalling interest in how do we actually roll this deal out now? There are a number of work streams I'm particularly interested in, some of the growth corridor work that's been identified. When will we hear what that's going to look like, how councillors and other committees will be involved in the actual rolling out of those parts of it as we progress?
As I mentioned, that's what we're working on right now, and I think in terms of managing expectations of when something might come back to you.
I've got someone in my office having a bit of a look at that, and we've discovered, as you usually do here, that whilst we can zone places to go 20 stories, all of our planning rules and building rules get in the road, and so we need to have some unification of the various rules that we've got all over the place so you can actually do these things. It's also part of what we're going to do with the standardisation at Auckland of AT's rules, which are different from NZTA's rules, which are different from our own planning rules, and which are different from what any normal person who can chew gum and walk would even dream up in some cases. So there is a bit of work to be done there, but we have. The more you look into innovative ways of building here, the more we have manufactured rules to prevent it. And so there is a bit of work being done there, and I'm taking the Chief Building Inspector out to show him ways of building things which are quite sensible but haven't really been heard of in that particular office.
Okay.
We'll talking with Max, we'll commit to having an initial roadmap in advance of the next governing body meeting.
Okay, great, thank you. Then the few questions I've got. I guess the plan that's been produced is really helpful from a business continuity point of view, and understand that's largely the remit that was asked for. What I'm interested in too is how we take that a step further, not just in how we do our own business, but our role supporting Aucklanders to do their business, some of which is not business at all, is, you know, moving around the city, right? For a variety of purposes. So what I'm particularly interested in is the stuff on, I'm just going to find the page. Sorry, too many windows open. So in the memo that was sent, the page 27, stuff around Auckland Transport and the different phases there. So I'm particularly interested in the public transport and the buses around phase 2 and the opportunity there to do pop-up bus lanes to accelerate. So, for example, in my area, there's been consulted on and the consultation's complete, the decision's been made to extend bus lane hours on Dominion Road, and yet it's been months and it still hasn't happened. So there's a number of decisions, for example, that were already in flight, and now is the time to go, okay, we do them now. And as I say, pop-ups for phase 2. So what's the thinking there? You've got network efficiencies mentioned. I would see that as a network efficiency. Is that what's being thought of?
Yes, morning, exactly that. We've prepared a list of opportunities. So as you say, locations where we've already done the consultation, the designs are ready, and then there's an opportunity identified that we could speed up buses. So it's a timing thing of when would we put that in as either a trial or a pilot, which would let us do it faster than going through the full process.
Sorry, could I just ask you to bring the mic a little bit closer?
So sorry.
Thanks. That's okay.
Yes.
Yes.
So at the moment, because we're in phase 1, we're not moving into making those changes immediately. We've also got to watch the general traffic. So general traffic at the moment has been slightly down in April. I think it's been about 6 to 8% below expectations. So that's making it easier for buses to move anyway, because there are fewer cars on the road. So yeah, it's just trading off when would we be prioritising buses over cars, given there are still cars on the road. So that's why it's appropriate to go to phase 2. But we're ready, and we'd appreciate the support to get things through quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I'd support press and go on that as soon as possible, particularly with those ones that are already consulted and ready to go. The efficiency of those bus movements will lower their fuel use, and we know that that's one of our biggest fuel users.
It will help, and also cycle buses through trips faster, because they'll be the return journey will be faster, so we can increase the capacity. That's our focus at the moment, is the capacity management. With public transport boardings increasing, making sure we've got enough space for everybody.
Okay, so what do you need from us politically to help you press go on that stuff?
We'll come back to you when there's something that we feel we need to press go on, when we see a need for it.
Okay. All right, and then the other thing in that space is hedging on fuel purchases. I have to admit, this is not something I know a lot about. And my understanding is that most of our fuel purchases, like, we're not directly buying fuel. We have contracts with people who are buying fuel, and I'm mindful of Ross's advice in the confidential session next week. I don't want to get into the detail of specific contracts. But do the businesses that we work with who are buying fuel to do stuff for us, are they hedging on fuel purchase? Is that something that they can do? I'm not sure who can answer that.
We may have to come back to you on that. I don't have that information.
Great. And then my final question, which is really more probably to the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor. I'm aware there's these meetings with mayors around the country and stuff, talking with central government and with ministers. And I guess I'm looking for some assurance here around the advocacy that you're both bringing to those discussions, because while we're getting confirmation from government about supply in phase 3 and phase 4, we're not getting much comfort around price. And they are in a much better position than us to deal with price fluctuations. So what is the conversation happening there at the political level around the fact the government needs to give us some certainty around price. I'm not saying they need to give us certainty now that it's going to cost this much, but they need to make a commitment that the pain of the cost, because we'll be able to get fuel, we'll just have to pay a fortune for it, and it gets to a point where economically it could, particularly for smaller councils, be a huge impost at a time when they're already under pressure. But for us too, the cost of our public transport system is probably our biggest vulnerability here, and we need to take that seriously as a lifeline service as well as our broader aims of reducing emissions, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, well, the conversations around those are almost non-existent to the extent that I just don't think they know. And whilst you're boldly saying we can definitely get fuel, it's a statement in itself that's possibly not fully able to be backed. And I should imagine they're worried about agricultural sectors and other things way before they think about councils and buses. So the conversation is that I don't think they know. And so blandishments aren't going to help at this stage. We've got a series of zones we're going to go through, and we have I've read what the council's response to that, and it's a very good response. It's got lots of pages and red bits and green bits, and it's well thought through. But that's assuming that things don't get a whole lot worse, which they could quite easily. There hasn't been, to be fair to say it, I don't think the guy who started this whole thing off thought through what was going to happen. So it's a bit hard to expect somebody in a small island at the bottom of the world to have it much thought out better either. Just what we need to do is be prepared and flexible, and that's the best that we can do here. We are lucky we do have some electric cars and electric buses, but when you look at it, this is the government that removed the incentive to have electric cars so you could have diesel Ford Rangers. Well, that doesn't look all that clever just at the moment. So we just got to wait and see. So I think that we should be observant, flexible, and careful. And we have Councillor Hills.
Thank you. Just
You're
first,
riding a bicycle.
First, I got the bus in. Today it was electric. Just a question for Ross first, and it is just on the rates cap situation. I think I said at the time that because we will have suddenly a technical hold on revenue, it raises our can raise our borrowing costs. I mean, it was mentioned by Moody's as a sudden risk to us now because we're not technically sovereign now. We have to beg for it. Is it right that even 0.5%, if the rates cap does affect our borrowing costs, is it right even 0.5% could add $70 million to our OPEX, which is equivalent to 2.5% rates increase anyway?
I think that's the right order of magnitude. There's two components. If our credit rating is downgraded, that will add borrowing costs through the credit margin. If interest rates go up because of just global trends, that also adds cost. We have some hedging in the short term, but longer term, that doesn't provide us with full cover forever. So yeah, the impact of rates capping gives us a very small margin of error. At the moment, our forward projection is 3.5% rates increases. If the rates cap is around 4%, that gives us a very small buffer, and any movement in interest rates could blow that out of the water pretty quickly. So we will be in a very constrained position, not a lot of flexibility, and our ability to cope with any uncertainty, such as the fuel situation or anything else that comes our way, will just be harder and harder.
So even before the Iran war, I think the Reserve Bank were already forecasting far higher inflation than originally forecasted. So that on top of this, on top of rates capping, could take about 4% of rates just on interest cost changes due to government So we'll
I mean, it's
have a rates cap.
very early days, very hard to speculate. But yes, I mean, they could easily take us from 3.5% to 4%, just minor fluctuations in future interest rates, because of credit rating issues or any kind of just general economic trends. At the moment, it's really uncertain what the impact of fuel costs might mean. It could mean lower growth, higher inflation, sort of stagflation environment going forward, which is kind of the worst of all worlds situation. That stuff will be we'll have to keep a close eye on that and monitor it through the LTP. But the rates capping gives us very limited room to move.
Seems counterintuitive, but okay. On the fuel, and thank you so much for the plan, and thanks for Pearl for meeting with Julie and I on this. I guess it's a question for Phil or Pearl. Do you feel like we have enough signals out there right now to the organisation to not necessarily conserve fuel right now, because we know that we're not at that stage, but just because of these ballooning costs, we're paying almost double what we were in January for diesel each week. So are we doing enough to try and conserve the amount of fuel being used to save money right now, not just conserve fuel?
Well, it's fair to say I would describe what we're doing as a measured response, a sort of proportionate response. So, yes, there's been active communications into this organisation, likewise Auckland Transport, likewise Watercare, into their organisations about this. We are advantaged in terms of what's in our immediate control by the proportion of electric vehicles in the fleet and so on. So yeah, I think we're about right for where things sit at the moment. Monitoring the situation for sure, and if the government's system kicks it up a gear, then proportionately we'll have to do a little bit more, and possibly can.
Thank you. And I asked Phil this question, it was in confidential at appointments, but maybe it's a question for Richard around, similar to Councillor Ferry, the pop-up bus lanes, or I'm noticing a whole lot more kids on scooters and bikes right now, obviously because it's the freest form of transport. But is there a top 10 list that Stacey has, or you guys have of things you could do quickly, things that we could roll out that make it safe, stuff near schools? I asked Phil, is there a bit of a lag because of the transition that you're feeling like we don't want to put too much out there right now because we're coming within council? I don't know, but it does feel like we're maybe not using the crisis to jump on board. Talking to scooter and bike shop owners on the shore, they're getting 150% increase in sales. So we're going to have a safety issue as well as, how do we get access for more people to be doing these things, if it gets worse especially?
I'd support your comments on the increased use of cycling in active mode. So our cycle counts are 16% up compared to last year. And bike hubs and bike shops are telling us that they're a lot busier as well. But as Phil says, measured response right now. Putting pop-ups for cycle lanes would mean taking away from roading private vehicles on roads. So look forward to working with the road controlling authority in the future as we need to make changes to support that. But yes, again, we've got a list of ideas and locations that we could put pop-ups in, and how we would better support people using active modes if we start seeing Aucklanders switching even more to active modes.
And I think to Councillor Ferry's point, there are plenty of examples where it might be one or two cars parked in a lane that creates massive delay for hundreds of people on buses. So I don't necessarily think those one or two drivers would be upset parking on a side road or whatever, but I think there's a lot of examples. The other one was, and I guess it is for the Mayor and Phil in your conversations, if you look at the Australian cities, I'm not asking for free public transport. I'd rather a lot more money go into more services than go free, but the costs are going up crazy. Are we asking the government, suggesting, the last government did come to us with pretty significant subsidies to help us through COVID. This seems like another, even $5 or $10 million would have a significant impact on our budget and enable us not to cut services. when you look at all the Australian cities, they're doing free or cheap or massive discounts for people to encourage public transport, and we're not enabled because our cost is going up quite significantly. Are we talking to them, asking them?
I've pointed out that they manufactured $50 that they didn't have to give to people to carry on driving their cars, which struck me as completely not making use of the opportunity to, and they'd be far better to just give those people a $50 bus ticket. There are equal numbers on either side of the opportunity to reduce costs or increase charges at the moment, and so there isn't a correct one-off answer to that. And again, in Australian cities, you've got to remember that there is probably 10 mayors in Sydney and even more in Melbourne. So it was a state government decision. We weren't, again, involved. I think they gave out the $50 to everybody just before they signed the city deal. But we will be talking to them about what we're going to do next. I think what we are doing with AT is that they're making better use of where they've got electric ones and diesel ones, because that hasn't been that clever either.
Okay.
We're aware of this, and it'll be a topic of conversation which will get more and more serious as and when war extends or stops. We don't know.
And the last question on that, I guess, is to advocacy. Oh, well, if you've got an answer, you could add to this as well, Phil. Just on so the government cut the 56 million for EV bus subsidies, and of course the 75 million towards our electric ferries, which was all about, they don't care that much about climate change or emissions. But if you look at it just from a cost perspective, it was already going to be a 60% saving on OPEX under the old price for diesel. It now must be mass increases in OPEX. So I'm just wondering if we should be writing to go. I mean, I'm happy to do it, but it's not my role. So, how can we ask for this type of thing to be looked at as a cost thing? If they don't want to touch climate change, that's fine. But a simple cost, we can show them the data that is significantly improves our cost over time, the OPEX.
Yeah, thanks. I think, and this relates to the question from Councillor Ferry earlier. We are in contact with government at an officials level. I think the best thing we can do at the moment is sort of advocacy, yes, but making sure that they're made fully aware of what the impacts are here. Of course, anything that we're spending in the transport space has a corresponding subsidy contribution from central government, more or less. These issues are confronting NZTA and their funding pressure as well. So, I think there is an opportunity for us to kind of keep a level of tension on central government around the response, and be ready to advocate for more in the event that the situation gets worse. So
we've had the lesson of COVID. When things get more expensive, people do less. Work from home, having finally got people to come back to work again, we're going to find the buggers go at home. So that's going to be another tricky thing. Who's next? Councillor Henderson?
Parul just had something to add.
Sorry, Parul.
If I may just add, Minister Bishop actually had a conversation with all the PT operators must be a month ago now, and that was to understand what are the issues that are facing the sector, and if we were to up PT by a big, really high, and cost did come up at that point as well. So I think they are quite aware of what it looks like. It's just that nothing has come back in terms of how could they help. But they are very aware of the fact that if PT is the only way people would be able to travel at that point in time, cost has to be thought through and how might that be supported.
Yeah, I think I'm not foreshadowing anything here other than the fact that we clearly need to keep monitoring this situation carefully. One of the likely responses from government will be, what are you doing to mitigate your own cost exposure here? Now that leads us down the path of having potentially serious conversations around this table about service levels and where we can economise, but necessarily understanding whether there's an impact on services. I think at that point, it's some advice to yourselves and some discussions about the best response to this, and that's what's sort of foreshadowed, if necessary, in the memo to you earlier.
It's indeed a topic of conversation around the new board. How do we use the money better? And it may be some things get trimmed as well as. Okay, I'm sure everyone's working hard. They all understand the complexities here. Very hard to get a good answer. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you. Foreshadowing, I've got a question on the city deal around identified growth areas, but I'll do the fuel ones first. Don't know if you want Max to come help out in a moment, but I'm just letting you know. Okay, just around the fuel stuff, I've got a couple of cues. So first and foremost, this is really great. Like it's awesome that we get a chance to talk about this at committee, and hopefully as the crisis develops and evolves, we show a bit of leadership on responses, and this will be the vehicle for that. So I suppose my question is, are we envisaged to have future briefings on this topic as we're going, and how frequent would we be doing that?
As I mentioned, the guidance from government is still evolving, and once we have clearer indication of what that looks like around bans, we will bring back to you a revised version of the plan for your information.
Cool. Through this, I have concerns not just about how we're balancing our own budget as a council organisation, but how the city's faring, how household budgets are faring, and how our GDP is faring. So I noticed that we can model traffic congestion costing the city X billion dollars a year, right? We've had that released. I'm wondering if we have data to show how much fuel cost rises will affect the GDP and economic activity of Auckland.
I think that is some work that has been asked for to be done, not yet at the moment.
We can take that up with Gary, the chief economist.
Yeah, awesome. And just to piggyback off that, a related sort of point maybe to take to Gary as well, is whether we're getting data on the impact in sort of dollar terms on people's actual household budgets and their kitchen table spend. So not just GDP wide, but struggling family and Auckland wide as well. If we can do that too, that'd be cool.
Yeah, I think what I'll do is I'll ask Gary to circulate to you a bit of advice on this, his reading of the situation and how the scenario might unfold.
Fantastic. I might sort of save the rest of my stuff for debate. Can I jump to the city deal?
Max is going to come and save me.
Thank you, Max.
Just while you're at it, though, it's not just struggling families, there's struggling businesses out there.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And some of the large businesses are struggling, which will have an impact on a lot of families. So we've got to sort of get ourselves out of the family kitchen room and look at right across the whole economy. There's a number of sudden developments are stalled at the moment, which aren't going to be encouraged by this sort of stuff. There's all sorts of market things. One last thing I would like to share there, we met with all the major developers last week, and the message they had is that there's more land available in the city now than they can use for many years. So there isn't any need for more subdivisions outside the area as far as they're concerned.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, couldn't agree more, actually, and concern about any question of working from home mandates, etc. That'll really slam our businesses in Auckland City in particular. But I had planned to come back to that, so I might come back to that. Max, first cue, what's the practical element of being an identified growth area as opposed to not being one? What actually happens and what changes?
Sorry, Councillor, when you identified growth area, do you mean, are you speaking of the...
Four listed in the
priority locations. What they represent are locations which the Crown and Council have agreed to work together on. And there are, in each case, there are specific things that we have agreed to work together on. So they're not an attempt to sort of provide an exhaustive list of areas we might prioritise investment as a council. So the practical implication is that through the Auckland deal framework, which we'll be establishing, the Crown and the Council will work together on those initiatives.
Thank you. I suppose I ask because I have some concerns about kind of the forgotten cousin of the family being Westgate and Red Hills, and whether you envisage, and it might be a full question as well, there'll be less resourcing from this council going to that area for planning and development because we've identified other areas.
Well, I'll give it a first go, and might get saved by my boss here. The simple answer is that the deal, you will be making separate decisions around how we allocate the council's resources, and there are, we'll be taking some information to you collectively as part of the long-term planning process around how you might prioritise investment spatially. And we'll have some sessions in terms of the long-term planning direction setting soon on that. So the deal doesn't make that decision for you. What it does is it represents a commitment for us to work together with the Crown, and so it might be a factor that you take into account when you make those decisions, but it doesn't decide for you whether certain areas will receive less investment.
Cool. Hey, I really appreciate that. Thanks for letting me put you on the spot. I think those are my cues. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, that's all the questions I've got here. So, Councillor Watson.
Yeah, two questions. One on the fuel crisis, and in light of some of the comments that have been made in our interactions with the government, there is a reason that we're in this situation, just like other big chunks of the world. I guess it's the purview of the government to decide on what that response is on the international scene, perhaps, less than emphatic thus far. So my question is, as far as us and our new conversations with the government, I would be expecting us to be articulating very clearly what the on-the-ground consequences are for the people of Auckland. Obviously, this has been signalled for months that this is at best is going to have a very long tail. So I just, in terms of political advocacy, I'm just curious to know what approach, if any, we may have to making that very clear to the government what the consequences are for Auckland. And I'm thinking of perhaps more detail than just saying, oh, well, the price of diesel's gone up or whatever. What there are spin-on effects, like Councillor Henderson was referring to, that go to the population. Well, I won't stray too much into the national political analysis, but it does go to that point of robustly monitoring what the situation was, what the effects are, both organisationally, as others have said, and at a community level. We just, there has been communication of those impacts to central government, but we just need to keep that up and provide that view in clear, uncertain terms.
New Zealand may have to try and become a little bit more pointed than it's been done thus far. Just final question to continue that theme of conversation with the government, and it goes to the Auckland deal. I'm not quite sure who's best to answer this, but I heard the interview of the Mayor with Jack Tame on Sunday night, and it certainly what didn't appear too promising. I think the recurring adjective there was underwhelming and worse, and it's only just started. So in this deal, I think it's anticipated it lasts 10 years or decade or thereabouts, and there is provision for a 5-year review. So I guess if we take the old maxim of, starting the way you mean to go on in terms of what the experience has been thus far, according to what's been fed back to us anyway, what is the ability to
look at that earlier than waiting 5 years, because if it is a big disappointment or a letdown, or it's largely just serving a kind of political window dressing, then presumably we wouldn't want 5 years to make that apparent. So that comment's based on the feedback we've received of things thus far.
A not unreasonable comment at all. I mean, basically, not going to wait 5 years. Every time they're doing something wrong, we remind them immediately about what is in there. It was always going to be somewhat difficult. It was their idea, it wasn't ours. And they have more incentive to make it work than we do, so that they don't like being reminded, and they are adjusting their behaviour accordingly. And I think they'll probably bitterly regret signing the thing in the fullness of time. There's more pressure to come. We've got the 30-year transport plan coming up, which is well and truly mentioned in that and in the legislation which has just passed. We're waiting for the royal assent, whatever that is. I think we just got to keep constantly battling our side. It's like in any negotiation, you don't wait around 5 years if it's not going well, you talk immediately. And so we will be doing that. And any input you've got, you're welcome to give it to me, and I'll carry it forward. You know, so I welcome your points. It is we're trying to overcome decades of a behaviour of a parent towards a child, and it's going to take a bit of them getting used to the fact that it's no longer that.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So I guess my question probably more aimed at in the actual, agreement, which I don't know if it's still legally privileged or not, or is it, Phil? No, it's on the open now. Yeah, okay. Just in the agreement, when you looks at the terms and the reviews, it seems to be a little light on follow-up in terms of a situation where, where things don't proceed as envisaged outside of this 5 years. It requires changes that are signed by each party. So I'm just wondering, in practical terms, what your view is of any need that short of that 5 year term where you just say, well, this isn't working, it's not serving the effect, and you might cut the strings. I mean, it's too early to be saying that, of course, but I'm just looking at the mechanisms that are in the agreement.
Look, I mean, I understand the concern, and I think about this as being in a bit of a change process. As the Mayor said, we're trying to fundamentally change the way that the relationship with central government operates, away from more of a parent-child one to something different. It'll take time. It's not going to be all smooth sailing, but shoot me for being naive, but I think we've got to approach this in a positive way, and with a view to what the deal might achieve and how the relationship might mature over time, and come to that with sort of a bit of positivity and goodwill. I'm not directing that at anyone, but I think if we start early on in a slightly defeatist mode, then that's exactly what will happen. So.
I mean, there are some things in there that aren't going to wait 5 years, like the bed night levy. We had 3 different parties getting together, that would be in now. But one was one stumbling block, and so we've said we'll definitely have a big discussion about that next year, or later on this year when there's a change. So we're not waiting 5 years. It's sort of an iterative document, really. We just got to keep working on it, like a forced marriage, really. Councillor Newman's wishes to add in here, and welcome. You're next up.
Good afternoon. Phil, can I just understand organisationally, notwithstanding the political debates around this, an Auckland deal which was signed on the 10th of April this year, so 25 days ago, 25 days old deal, that the organisation will make its best endeavour organisationally to work with the government officials to give effect to the intent of the Auckland deal, regardless of the political landscape, either at local government or central government. Until you are directed otherwise, the organisation just effectively commits to the deal and tries to make good with it. Is that correct?
Yeah, precisely right, and that's what's happening at the moment. And the deal actually anticipates some formal mechanisms around that, and we're getting those in place with central government officials now.
And in the 25 days or whatever it is since the deal was signed, that officials have been working expeditiously with departmental officials to try and say, well, this is what the consequence of this will mean, and that we operationally, this is how we give effect to this, etc., etc. That's how this conversation's working.
Yes.
Okay, I've got no further speakers, so would you like to retire? And thank you for the work that you're doing in facing uncertain times. Beg your pardon? I'll move this and the Deputy Mayor will second this so we can have a discussion. Is there anyone? I think I've got fairly well discussed in amongst the questions. On that basis, I will move this. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, second. Carried rather. The next three items are very procedural, and I'm hoping to take the liberty of moving all three, 7.3, 7.4 and 7.5 as a group. Is there a seconder brave enough for that? Councillor Baker. I'll move that. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, carried. Then we're going to have the next one. It's a procedural motion to exclude the public. That'll be moved by Deputy Mayor and seconded by Councillor Fletcher. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, carried. So I'll call this stopped for 10 minutes while Sandra